Well, hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to another week, another episode, another podcast. Hello, everybody. I'm Leanne.
And I'm Jason, and this is Let's Talk.
Let's talk. As we know, this is a space where no topic is off limits. We're going to cover things from well-being to resilience, leadership, money, relationships, mindset, emotional intelligence, neuroscience, and so much more.
Absolutely. And as always, here at Let's Talk, we bring different perspectives, real stories of our own and others, and honest conversations, because the things that we often don't talk about are the things that actually end up being the most important to talk about.
And our goal here is simple. It's really just to spark new ideas, to shift your mindset, and to give you practical tools that you can use in your leadership, but more importantly, in your whole life.
Exactly. So, whether you're tuning in today for inspiration, growth, or just a fresh perspective, let's talk.
Let's talk.
Let's talk.
Let's talk. So today's episode is powerful because it basically integrates everything that we've discussed over the last few weeks through the lens of neuroscience and emotional intelligence. We look at habits, money, we've looked at courage, we've looked at leadership, and your deeper work around identity and becoming, right? Because this is where you don't just understand, you actually decide who you are becoming next. And who you've been in the past is not necessarily who you want to be in the future. So today's conversation is going to really ground us in how do we affect the changes in ourselves, because identity is like a rubber band to me. If you want to change something and you haven't shifted your identity, it will kind of flick you back. So we've got to work on our identity and upgrade that consistently. So
Yes.
that's
Sorry, I didn't go on,
okay.
Leanne.
That's okay. All good. So this is our final episode in this particular series, which is the neuroscience of being human. We'll declare what our new series starting next week will be at the end of our session. But in this final episode, it's the one that brings everything together, like we've discussed, right? Because um, we've really explored how our brain shapes behavior, how it shapes our emotions, our connections, our decision making, our habits, how courageously we show up, our relationships, our money, and our relationships even with money. So we've kind of dug deep under all of this, but beneath all of it is our identity, and our identity shapes everything.
Yeah, and identity is who you believe you are, right? Um, in how you show up and how you interact in conversations, whether those professional or personal, um, how you behave, just all that together is who you believe that you are and the narrative behind that, right? That daily narrative. So, this episode, which is called Identity Upgrades Becoming the Future You, um, is within this conversation is we're going to dive deep and talk about real change. And it doesn't happen when you try harder. It actually happens when you become someone different. So when you anchor yourself into someone different and your visualization into who you want to be and who you want to become. Like Leanne and I were just actually talking before we went live um, about that with some changes that I've been dealing with just as of today, actually. And, that helpful tool, and thank you again, Leanne, for that, is, you know, really visualizing yourself at a time when you felt the most happy or that you had the best amount of abundance in your life and just that feel good feeling, right? And anchoring yourself into that and then visualizing forward. Um, and it was just such a helpful tool. And so, it's going to be a practice that I'm going to try to do every day. Whether that's upon waking up in the morning or after I kind of get up and get myself together, just to take that pause, and to do that visualization, which probably will take a minute, 2 minutes, and we all have that within our day.
If I can just add
So
to that, Jason, and the
yeah,
reason it's so
absolutely.
important to go back to past success is because when we visualize, usually we're in this scarcity mentality, or we're in a funk or something, and we're trying to visualize the future self of us, but our emotions are not matching that. So if we
Yeah,
can go back to past success, anchor in that, and then visualize from that physical state and emotional state, then it's going to be a much better visualization of the future, right? Because we don't have the internal conflict of the struggle now compared to where we want to be. We're actually visualizing from an anchored state of success to a new state of success. Um,
yeah,
and it just works so much better. And that all actually comes from the book Psycho-Cybernetics, which I have mentioned before in this podcast. It's a great one to listen to or read if you haven't yet.
yeah, exactly. Um, so within the conversation, when we say identity, what do we actually mean? Right? Identity is the story your brain holds about who you are. And it's that story that is an easy default, that your brain will always go back to, right? So it's around your beliefs around self. Like, who do you believe you are, right? If you tell yourself enough, you're going to believe it. um, and the different roles, that are within your life, and how you show up within those roles, and that all anchors back to patterns, right? What are the patterns that go around? I always like to use that hamster wheel analogy, because it just goes around and around and around. And when you do that enough, your brain is going to be like, well, this is who Jason is, or this is who Leanne is, right? And it also is around the expectations you set for yourself. Are those audacious expectations, or are they limiting expectations? Um, and also, this is just who I am. You know, People, and I've heard it a lot, just when you observe conversations, they may not say it in those exact words, but they'll say it in enough words to be like, well, you know what, this is just who I am right now. And I hear it a lot with people who are either later in life or getting ready to retire. They don't, because there's a whole identity shift when you retire, right? And there's just a lot of people who say, well, this is just who I am. And so, okay, I only have 5 more years left, or ten more years left, too late to change. And when it's not actually,
No,
um,
it's
no,
definitely not. We've got
not
to
am I
keep
gonna,
bringing life to life, right? More life to life.
absolutely. Because at the end of the day, your brain is constantly working to keep your behavior aligned with your story, because your brain doesn't like to overwork. It likes things easy. It likes to, so if it's aligning to like that story you're telling yourself to keep in that comfort zone, then that's where it's going to always default you back to. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Leanne.
Yeah, I just want to double click on what you said there about aligning your behavior, or your brain keeping your behavior aligned to your story. Um, it absolutely does. We hardwire and automate everything we can in the brain. Like, that's just the way it goes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so to affect change, we've got to actually put in effort, which is a bit more difficult, which we don't like. So but if we don't put in the effort, we're gonna keep being pulled back to our old identity. So consistent repetition on the new thing that we want is really the key, because we want something new. For many of us, we really want something new and exciting, and we want to grow and evolve. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of people don't think they can. They've got that mentality around, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And you
Right.
can. Like, our brain is consistently coming up with new connections all the time. We're learning every single day. So you can teach ourselves new tricks. It's just that it takes a bit more effort, and generally people don't like that because effort is feels hard.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think organizations go through that too, right? Um, I've often heard working with organizations or in organizations like, we're in an identity crisis or we don't know what our identity is, right? But it's always easy to default back to, well, this over here isn't really broken. It's worked for us for, you know, set number of years, um but when you're trying to create that something new, kind of that change or that change management, there is effort. It's tough. And sometimes it's tough to discover your either what your present identity is if you're not real clear, and then the new identity that you want to like move into.
yeah. And you often hear organizations saying, but this is the way it's always been done, right? And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And
But
fix it.
actually, just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean we have to keep doing it that. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I do hear that. And in truth, the brain really prefers consistency over change. Like change just feels frightening. It feels hard work. And our brain prefers consistency. It prefers um, to know. It's like it has a crystal ball and it's predicting the outcomes based on your past experience, right? And that feels safe. Um, but and so with that, our brain and our identity creates predictability. So if we know who we are and this is who I am and this is who I've always been and this is who I'm always going to be, we've got that level of certainty, which is that comfort zone. But oftentimes our comfort zones are uncomfortable. Like we don't
Hmm.
love it. It's just that it's more comfortable than the unknown. And I know I've been stuck in that place in my life where it's like I'm not really happy here, but it's safe because I know it, because where I wanna go is actually feels unsafe because I don't know it. There's a bit of ambiguity there and uncertainty. So I'll stay in my comfort zone even though it's not really that comfortable anymore. Um, and I often in coaching, you hear this kind of theme come up all the time where people want something different, but it's easier to stay where they're at. And there's this, dissonance, right? This cognitive, like, battle that's happening inside of them between their future identity that's kinda calling them forward and their
Hmm.
current identity, which just wants to play safe. So, our identity really does create that predictability, and that predictability has that false sense of safety. And I say false sense because really we've got no control over anything in our lives anyway. But predictability feels like we have some measure of control, um, which is kind of a false safety, if I can say it like that, because we really don't have control over anything. People say the only thing we can control is ourselves. Well, even that we don't often control very well. Like, how often do we react to something and then we look back later and go, oh, that wasn't good? We didn't want to do that, but we couldn't control it. Like, we just reacted because it was a habitual pattern or what, as you said earlier. So the brain likes to have that crystal ball predictability for safety and security. And it will reinforce familiar patterns because that feels safer. And we will resist unfamiliar patterns because we don't know enough about it. It doesn't mean that it's bad, it's just that we don't actually know enough. So we resist it. Even if the familiar is limiting to us, which it often is, like we have to evolve all the time. So
Hmm.
we need to do it, but we don't want to do it and we resist it. And it creates a problem and internal conflict for us. And you can see it in people, right? Where they have this conflict about, I hate my job, but I'm too scared to do something, or, you know, I, I don't know whether I should stay in this relationship or move out because it's stifling or it's unhealthy or toxic or whatever the case may be. Like we often stay in situations that aren't good. They're limiting us, they're having us play small because we're resisting the effort of change. And they resist the identity disruption that's going to cause, right? Because
Hmm.
we also have fear that we won't be part of the tribe or the team, and we know that that's part of our survival as well. So we need to like be a disruptor. to our own identity, um, and actually show up a little bit differently. Because our neural pathways, as we know, will strengthen with repeated performance. So if we keep practicing the same thing, we're just hardwiring our current identity even further into our being. Does that mean we can't change it? Absolutely not. We can. But it's hard to do because it's so hardwired. It's the super highway, right? Like as soon as this happens, I respond like that. That's my identity. When this shows up, I do this. That's my identity. This is who I am. But the truth is, it's not who you are. It's just a role we play. And we can shift that at any time. The other thing that then comes up is bias, right? Like our biases kick in, like confirmation bias reinforces our identity. So we keep looking for examples to show us how we can remain the same, as opposed to looking at different things that we could do or that the risk, like we don't want to take the risk. We want that safety. And that's another bias, as we know, in the brain. And our habits protect our identity. So everything that we do kind of protects who we are. And that's okay. But a lot of our habits no longer serve us. Like all habits, even bad habits, I've said this before, started from positive intent. But as we grow, learn, and evolve, some of those habits
Mhm.
become not so helpful, but they do protect the identity that we have. So we don't have to change anything up. We can stay with that predictability. So you don't have to behave outside your identity for long, right? Because once we start behaving outside our current identity, our identity then shifts and that becomes our new norm. So it's not like we have to play this uncomfortable game for very long. Like once we practice and with a bit of repetition and a little bit of positive reinforcement from ourselves,
Mhm.
um, the new thing that we're working on becomes habitual. And then it's not so scary.
Yeah. And so within that, I want to talk a little bit on why change often fails. So, with what Leanne was just talking about, this is why people struggle so much to change habits and to change them in a better way or in a healthy way or better habits that are going to serve you now at this point of your life, right? Because oftentimes, maybe habits that we had 5 years ago aren't serving us in present day, right? Because what they're constantly doing is they're trying to change behavior without changing identity. Okay. So, you know, oftentimes, and I know that I've done this as well, right? Is like I'm trying to be more confident, right? Like, it may be like a new project or a new initiative or something that I've never done, or maybe I have like a little bit, of experience with, but not as much as maybe say person B is. Sometimes I'll try to, I'll say to myself, I'm trying to be more confident. Or in times when, I'm talking about money as I'm trying to save more money or I'm trying to be healthier. But what's going on underneath it all is I'm not disciplined enough, right? I'm bad with money. I'm not that person. And with that, is that the brain is always bringing your behavior back to your identity, right? And it's bringing back to that narrative that's going on, right? So, those are some examples of why change and changing habits can be so hard.
Yeah. It's so important that we have this conversation, Jason, because whatever our itty bitty shitty community is saying quietly on the inside
Mm-hmm.
or loudly on the inside really shapes how we show up in the world and who we believe we are. And anything with I am, anything that we attach the I am to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like actually um, either has us play limited or has us expand. And it's why affirmations can work so well because we start saying the words until we believe the words, right? Like
Yeah.
we may not be able to feel confident if we're kind of sitting there going, oh, actually, I'm bad with money, or I'm not disciplined, or, whatever the case may be. But if we can start literally saying words out loud and on repeat, we will
Yeah.
eventually start to believe those words, and that shifts our identity.
Well,
Um,
right.
and
Well, oh, I'm sorry.
no, 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 go on.
No, I was just going to put in there that, and a lot of the I am statements, right, are kind of full stops.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to be more confident versus, you know, the what, the how questions that are more open ended. Like, you know, what does being more confident look like? You know, or how can it be more confident within this situation,
Yeah.
given blah, 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 blah.
I love that how questions, like, how can I show up better? How can I become more disciplined? Because it's not a full stop. We're
Mm-hmm.
constantly evolving. And we don't want to limit ourselves, right? By any means. So this identity thing that's happening below the surface needs a revamp. We need to look at it. We need to lift the rug and have a look at what is keeping us here. It's often safety. It's often our comfort zone. But more than all of that, it's the stories we're telling ourselves. Yes, this feels safer, and no, I don't want to do the work to change. But actually, do I believe I can? Do I believe I have what it takes to make the change that I need to make in my identity? And Jason, you shared a beautiful story today, which I think is a great example of identity shifting, how we might have responded before to how we respond now. Like, you can see the growth in identity, you can see how
Mm-hmm.
much you've changed. Do you want to share that story at high level?
Yeah, yeah. I'll share at, at a super high level.
Yeah.
Um, for confidentiality purposes. Um, so, you know, have a client, um, newer client, in my business, and been doing onboarding and getting to know systems, all that kind of stuff. And then it was kind of like this week was kind of the okay, let's merge into projects and like observing in different meetings on how things are done and all that kind of stuff. And you know um but like nothing was coming through. And then I had a meeting today with one of the leaders, and they're like, well, we have to kind of put this on pause because our internal clients aren't, like, things aren't moving, so there's nothing to give you, you know and um but things will come, right? And um and for me it was just kind of like, okay, there was the for a moment, there was kind of the scarcity mindset that set in, like, right, like around money, and like, okay, like, how, like, where do I got to move things around? And, how do I got to go back to the drawing board and be creative to get things, coming in over this next month, right? The, um, the hard parts, right, about being an entrepreneur. Um, and, you know, also like the mindset of like, okay, you know what? Like I could go on and like apply for all these jobs, but am I going to be happy in those jobs? Right. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I merged into entrepreneurship. And so, I was sharing this story, right, with my co-host Leanne at the beginning. And like, she had thought that this happened yesterday or the day before. And I was like, oh, no, 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 this happened this morning. And she's like, wow. She was like, like some good emotional resilience and agility there. And, you're handling it well. And, it is a part of growth, right? That I've seen within myself to be like, okay, you know what, Jason, not going to sit on the couch and eat bonbons all day long, you know? Um, but, it's like, okay, finish that meeting, got something to eat to nourish myself and to hydrate myself. And then I'm on this self walking challenge, that I'm doing. I'm like, okay, go on a walk, or go on your walk earlier and, just collect your thoughts and see what creativity comes, and, had a couple phone calls. And so, yeah, so, it was like I took that step back and had put in some emotional resilience and emotional agility. Um, and that's why I shared the story with what tool Leanne gave from that book, because it's a good tool when things like this occur. Whether you're an entrepreneur or if you're in a full-time role, and maybe say, let's say you got laid off or just things aren't going well, it's a good tool to visualize a time in your life when things were good, like money, abundance, energy, all that, to anchor yourself in and then to visualize forward. Um, so that's kind of the story at the high level. Um, but I do think it's a self-reflection for me to see how I've grown and how I respond, because that's part of being an entrepreneur too. Sometimes things are paused at the last moment, and you have
Often.
no, exactly, and you have no control, right? um and so, it does take some of, like I said, emotional resilience, agility, intelligence, to get yourself recentered, self-regulated, and move forward. And I like what Leanne also shared with me too, is that, sometimes when things like this happen, it frees space up for things that you don't know that are coming into your universe, to bless you and, you know, help you create new things and meet new people and all that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's my story. And, there is, a big part around identity, right? Because it's just like I have to think now, like, okay, what's my identity that I want to move into, right? But you need those tools to help you, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people get in a conundrum, I guess, is that they don't have tools
Mm.
to, like, because when stuff like this happens, I mean, it's easy to go in those tailspins and be emotionally hijacked and, oh my God, and, just go crazy. But it's like, if you have those tools in your toolbox, you can just go in your toolbox, open it up, and take this one out and take this one out. And it's also good, to help center that itty bitty shitty committee too, because so many of those, when things go, awry, it's easy for them to come on the stage and cause a ruckus and chaos. And so
Absolutely.
those tools help to put the right committee members on stage, and the ones that don't need to be on there off.
And the thing that stood out to me when you were sharing your story with me earlier, and also as you're sharing it here now, is that the identity growth that you've already had until this point. Like you said, previously you would have sat on the lounge and ate bonbons or donuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
This time your identity has shifted to a point where it's like, no, I'm going to nourish myself properly and I'm going to go for a right? Like, because that's the identity that you've now created. It's the new version of you, like Jason 2.0. And then we're looking at, okay, well, who do I want to be in the future? And that's Jason 2.1, right? Like, or whatever the case may be. So we're consistently updating and innovating our identity if we allow ourselves to. I had a conversation with a client this week who said, I've never been good with money, but I've only got 10 years of working and I need to set myself up. But, every time somebody starts talking to me about financial matters, she said, my eyes go crossed and, the lights are on, but nobody's home because I'm just not good at it. And I'm like, that's not the truth. Like, you're good with money. You have money, you spend money, like that's not the truth. So we had a bit of a conversation around belief systems and all the stuff that goes on under the surface. And by the time she got off the phone, about half an hour later, she'd already sent me a message saying, I've done this, 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 and this. Right. So her identity upgraded just within that conversation. And I'm not taking kudos for that because she did the work. Right? But sometimes we just need somebody to hold up the mirror and go, "Stop, that's actually not who you really are."
Hmm.
Don't play that limited game when there's so much more. And, we talked about growth mindset in a previous conversation, but even just adding the word yet, I don't know how to do that yet. I don't know what I'm going to do now yet. But the second we add yet, it opens us up to the possibility that there are options out there, um, regardless of what challenges that we're going to face. So being able to shift your identity into who you want to be as opposed to who you've always been, because our identity today is based on our past experience.
Hmm.
It's not based on our future desires. Right? So we've kind of got to upgrade in order to meet that future desire. And we talked about that a little bit last week around wealth as well. Like, have you created the identity that allows you to hold wealth
Hmm.
and, to be wealthy? Or do you still have the I can't afford it mentality, which is going to bring you back to where you currently are because that's what you believe? So we have to dig deep and get rid of all of those belief systems and the BS that live under the surface so we can update and upgrade our identity.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, it's just so interesting when things happen in life or kind of a curveball is thrown that either you've maybe been sensing or totally out of left field. It is so easy to default into old identity practices and behaviors,
Yeah.
even if you're operating in a new one,
Yeah.
because it's like the past ones are so ingrained and you did them for so long, right? So it's that reactionary, oh my God, like let me get online and apply for all these jobs. It's like, okay, hold on a second.
Is that what I actually want? Nope.
Right. Because, it's just like, even in the job process, I mean, you know, getting full-time jobs now, I mean, takes three. I mean, some people, some individuals are very blessed and very lucky that they can, find something in a month or a few weeks. But the majority, it's like 3, 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
So, if anybody is listening and, and if you've dealt or dealing with something similar, just remember to stop, take a breath, take a step back, and look at it through a global lens versus the reactive in the moment lens. Um, because you can, I don't want to say waste your time, but you can put that energy into doing A, B, and C when you could be doing D, E, and F. And you know that D, E, and F will actually serve you better in the long run as far as where you're trying to merge and go with life.
Yeah. And I think that's a valid point, Jason. When, the proverbial hits the fan, we'll often look at short-term actions and short-term outcomes. We don't look into the future, right? Like we're just trying to navigate this space. And we need to have that broader vision and that broader view of, hang on a second, who do I want to become? I'm not just solving this instant, I'm actually solving something for a longer term. And upgrading my identity is going to help me do that. Right. So I guess the question is, how do we actually shift identity?
Mm-hmm.
Because we really need to shift it, right?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and I think the first step, as always, I mean, we talk about this in almost every episode, is awareness, self-awareness. Like you need to be aware. You need to see the current identity clearly. You need to see what's showing up, what your patterns of behavior are, what your belief systems are, what you're saying to yourself internally, what you say to other people. Like you really need to spend the time to identify, what do I actually believe about myself? And is that actually true? Like, is that something that I chose? Where did it
Mm-hmm.
come from? Like, really, where did that belief come from? Was it something that I chose or was it thrust upon me by somebody else? Because oftentimes our identity doesn't come from that. And and there's three questions, really. There are three questions. The first one is, what do I believe about myself? Like, really, and journal that. I highly recommend journaling that. What do I actually believe about myself? And every time there's a resistance that comes up, ask that question, well, what do I believe about myself around this? And
Hmm.
see what comes up and what shows up. The second question is, where did it come from? Like, where did it come from? Did it come from, something I tried in the past that it didn't work? And then so I made myself, I'm a failure, or not good at this, or I'm whatever, because anything that we attach the I am to becomes part of our identity. And then the
Hmm.
third question, which is my favorite of all, is it true? Is it actually true? Am I that all the time? Like, I'm not good at math. Really? You're not good at math? And I know I actually worked alongside one gentleman who used to say to me all the time, I'm no good at math. I failed at math. I'm no good at math. And we worked in finance, mind you, right? Which was really interesting. So he was challenged by this all the time. And yet, when somebody would give us calculations, I'd actually have my calculator and he'd be able
Hmm.
to add it up in his head super fast, right? But his story was, I'm not good at math. And I'm like, but you are. Like, I actually just did this on my calculator and you had the answer in your mind, right? Like, you are good at math. But he was so attached to the identity of, I'm not good at math, like, so attached to it, despite the evidence to prove otherwise. And there was plenty of evidence proving otherwise. Um, so sometimes, yeah. So, what is it that I believe about myself? Where did it come from? And is it actually true? Is it really true? And if we can be really truthful about those questions, then we're going to get more access to understanding where we currently sit and what we need, what kind of bridge we need to get to the identity we want to get to. But the more clarity and awareness we have, the better. You want to speak to the second one, Jason?
Yeah. And the second one is, that space on creating your future identity, right? And the most important question in this creation of your future identity is, who am I becoming? Who am I becoming? What do I want to be? Where do I see myself? You know, um, and I always like to merge in the values part too, is who am I becoming within my set of values? Because if you're not aligned with your values, there's going to be energy around that and things are going to show up and you're going to wonder why. And a lot of times it's like, well, is that in alignment with your values? So I always like when I work with clients around, identity and creating a new identity or upgrading your identity is, you know, who am I becoming within my values, and not what do I want to do, but who do I want to be, right? And and for me, you always have to have that values part in order to really be in alignment as you merge into this new identity upgrade. Do you want to take the third one, Leanne?
I do, but I just want to add to what you said there, because the who do I want to be? We're human beings, not human doings. Like, we're always looking at, what do I would need to do? Like, what career? It's always external, but it's the internal world that shapes our external world, right? So who do I want to become? Who do I want to be? Who am I becoming? They're great questions. And it indicates that we do have the capacity to move forward, right? We don't have to stay where we're at. Even though it's scary to move forward, it's better to do so, because and little small wins, right? So we need to align behavior in small ways. Um, and because our identity, our new identity, our future self is built through evidence, small actions, right? Where we can prove to ourselves that we are changing, that we are evolving, that we are growing over time. And it might be something like, if I'm always quiet in meetings, I speak up occasionally where I might not have before. If somebody says, will you do a presentation? And I always say no because I don't like public speaking, I might say yes. Will it terrify me? Yes. But who I see myself as is somebody who has influence and can communicate well to groups of people, right? So it's
Mhm.
the small little things that we can do each day that helps to build that future state. that we want to become, and that future trait, right? That we want to become. So it's the small things we do. It doesn't have to be big, grandiose things. They often talk about the 2 millimeter shift. Like if you're in a car and you turn your steering wheel just 2 millimeters for the first umpteen miles, it doesn't feel like it makes any difference. But over time, where you end up is completely different if you've shifted by 2 millimeters to where you started at the beginning, right? Um, so we need these micro things to build in, and we need to celebrate the small wins. Yes, we will revert back to old wiring because it's there and because we've been practicing that for so long. But instead of beating yourself up for it, celebrate the fact that you saw it and you can choose differently again. So different things that you could do is speak up more, like use your voice, take up space, whether it's in meetings, in family, in a whole lot of different environments. Like actually speak up more. Give yourself permission to, regardless of how it lands. Like you've got the opportunity to practice that, and practice makes better. I don't say perfect anymore because there's no such thing as perfection. We just need to practice and get better and better each time. Make sure that you're making decisions that are aligned, as Jason said, to your values and who you want to be, not to the old, scared, stuck you, but the new, empowered version of you that you're choosing to become. So if we've got our values aligned, and we've got that vision of who we want to become, then we can make decisions based on that, not on scarcity and not on fear, but on our future self. And I think that's really, really important. And just start showing up differently. Whether that means that you change your clothing or you because sometimes, the clothes that we wear can have an impact. Like they talk about power colors and all sorts of stuff. And I'm not saying that you have to wear a red suit everywhere, necessarily. But, I had a client once who literally wore red underwear, bra, and, when she had to go and deliver presentations in front of groups of people. And she would remember that she had her power color on. So, she was showing up differently just because of something that she did under the surface. So we can do things like that. You might have a rock or a tumblestone or something that when you hold it, it reminds you about your future self. Like anchor into something and then show up differently for yourself, for your future self. Your future self will thank you. Every time that you get outside of your comfort zone, your future self will thank you.
Yeah, and before I go into the fourth and final one, I just wanted to say that self-doubt will come in along the way because that's just part of human nature and being a human being. But I think it's that power of self-awareness and emotional intelligence that you catch the self-doubt and then know how to bring yourself back up and move forward.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck sometimes, is in that circle of self-doubt. It's like that when you're waiting for your computer to change, and it's that circle that just never will go away. So it's kind of like self-doubt, 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 self-doubt. And then, before you know it, it's like you've wasted, a good hour or sometimes two of time and energy that you could have spent on something productive and moving you forward. And so I just wanted to put in there that self-doubt will come in along the way. And um, but it's that power of that self-awareness and emotional intelligence that can bring you back up
Yeah.
and then move you forward.
And I think self-doubt often comes from or is fed by comparison. Like when we
Oh,
compare ourselves to other people, right? The imposter kicks in and that self-doubt kicks in. And comparison is the thief of dreams. Like it really is, right? Like it's the thief of dreams. It's the thief of joy. It's the thief of happiness. When we compare ourselves to others, it instantly puts us into a state of lesser and then more or higher,
yeah.
right? And that's not good. Like we don't need to compare. Stay in your own lane. Um, you know, and yes, doubt will come in because that's our internal warning system saying, "Hey, this is scary. It's new. I don't understand it." but we can just go, okay, thank you for the warning, and I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
We can make sure we can have a look around and say, okay, have I checked all the dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's? I have. I've done the research. I know. Okay, good. I'm going to take the risk anyway, right? So it's calculated risk. It's not just being impulsive without thought. But we do want to make sure that we're not being stopped by that doubt, as you said there, Jason, and not comparing ourselves
Yeah.
to somebody else's highlight reel, right? Because we don't want to do that because everybody feels doubt. Everybody feels fearful at times. Everybody compares themselves. We're not an island. We're not going through this thing alone. Everybody does it. It's just that they don't declare it. So you might look at somebody who's uber confident or exudes confidence, but you have no idea what's going on under the surface for them or what
Hmm.
has gone on under the surface in the past to get them to this point, right? Um, so if ever you've got that imposter where you're in a room and everybody's more senior to you or everybody appears more confident or whatever the case may be, actually celebrate that because that's just your internal system going, hey, you're growing here. Um, and this is a bit scary, but it's good, right? So, yeah.
Exactly. Um, so before we go into the final part of our top tips and top resources, is I want to talk about this final one on rewiring identity. Say that 10 times. It's so we'll talk about repetition and emotional reinforcement. So the brain rewires repetition, especially when you have emotion attached. I'll say that again. The brain rewires through repetition, especially when emotion is attached. I remember, I think it was a couple episodes ago, we talked about, um, you know, people think that we're rational human beings occasionally reacting emotionally. Well, it's actually the opposite. We are emotional human beings sometimes showing up rationally or thinking rationally. So within this, we want to make sure that we celebrate some things, like Leanne talked about, those small wins. And a lot of times people, because they see what they want over here, like they see this big thing, and it's just like, these small wins are just going to take so much time. I just want to go here. And I've often seen it, right? Being a musician and having taught piano in the past and voice is that, like a lot of piano players or voice students are like, well, I want to be able to sing this aria, or I want to be able to, play this. And it's just like, okay, well, there's foundations you got to learn first. And I know vocally too, like tons of comparison all the time because they're like, well, I want to sing like Whitney Houston, or I want to sing like Mariah Carey. And it's like, no, you need to sing like Leanne, if you were asking me, right? And so because you need to create you need to create your identity, your voice. I mean, you may be able to sing a Whitney Houston song or Mariah Carey song, but you're never going to sound exactly like them. And so, but what I'm trying to get at within the, like, starting out playing piano or starting out singing is that you got to celebrate those small wins. Like, great, you know what? You did that scale so much better this week than you did last week. Or you sang that phrase of this simple art song way better, third time through versus when we started it at the beginning of the lesson, right? So, because you will eventually get to that big part. Um, and within that goes progress, right? You got to keep the progress going, moving forward, catching yourself when you get into those areas of self-doubt, bring yourself back up, dust yourself off, and keep moving forward. Because when you do that, you're going to be, especially if you have your eye on the prize or where you're going in for today's conversation, your identity, you want this as part of your identity. Well, it takes the small wins, it takes the progress moving forward, and with that, you're moving into alignment and better alignment.
And I
So,
think and I think you've got to celebrate the progress as well and the alignment. Like when you make a
oh,
choice
yeah.
that's with alignment as opposed to with fear or scarcity, you got to celebrate that. It's like, oh, I did it, you know,
Mhm.
because that will help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I can even relate it to this like self-walking challenge. And I know you did one last year. Um, like somebody asked me because I posted it on social media the other day. They're like, why 100 days? Like, why not 50 days? And I said, great question. Um, and I picked 100 as an audacious goal. And I know that there's going to be days here and there where it's like, I'm out of town or like I can't get it in for whatever reason, but I start up the next day, right? And so with each day, like today, I just completed day 4, 7. Um, and so, but I missed a couple days, but then a couple days I did 2 walks. I did one in the morning, and I did one at night. So kind of made up a little bit, but it's that progress for alignment. Oh, to get back about the 100 days, because I said, it's an audacious goal. And I said, then my goal after that is to continue. Let's do another 100 days, right? Um, and I remember their response was like, wow, like that's commitment, like that's commitment and discipline. And they had like some cute emojis and everything with it. Um, but it's like you said, it's like the progress of each day. Okay, celebrate that. It's like, okay, you did another day on your walk and check that day off. Or you did 2 today. Great. Um, and it's putting me more in alignment with my goal around health, right? So I think something to know to kind of end this part right is that identity isn't fixed. It's not like you go to the doctor and you fix your identity, right? Or you
And
take some magic pill.
nor is it stuck, right? Like it's not
Right.
stuck where it's at.
Yeah. It's constructed. And the beautiful part of that is you have an open sandbox to construct it how you want.
Yeah.
That's the freedom.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the real freedom, right? That we have a choice around who we are from this moment forward. From
Yeah.
this moment forward and from every moment forward, we can choose, how do I want to show up here? Do I want to
Mm-hmm.
show up from fear and my past experiences, or do I want to show up as something greater than I've been? And it's not that we need fixing because we're all human beings, but do I want to show up in a better way, in a more authentic way, in a way that actually serves me, and in a way that feels aligned to who I should be, as opposed to the fearful small me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think with that, unless you have anything else you want to add, Leanne, we can
Nope.
go into our top tips
Let's do it.
from today's conversation. Okay, so from today's conversation around identity upgrades, becoming the future you, the 3 top takeaways from Leanne and I's conversation today is that one, identity shapes behavior more than intention. I'll say that again. Identity shapes behavior more than intention. 2, the brain protects familiar identity, even if it's limiting, because it's comfortable. It doesn't have to work. It does, it's like, um, you know, I was kind of think of the gym, right? It's like, well, it's easier. Oh, I'll do the gym tomorrow, or I'll do it in 2 days, right? Because that's operating in my current identity of like making excuses of why I'm not going to the gym when it's 3 minutes down the street, right? So the brain will protect that. It's like, okay, Jason's operating the way he normally does, puts it off. But it's that work, that intention of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go to the gym 3 days a week or 4 days a week or 5 days a week. Um, so I think that's an important one to really know, is that from a neuroscience point of view, your brain protects that familiarity, even if it's small and limiting and safe. And thirdly, lasting change happens when identity, action, and values align. So when you have those three aligned, that's when more lasting change happens. Not saying that you're never going to default into an old hardwiring, but you're now you're now putting a new hardwire in place. And if you have that self-awareness, that tool of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, that's going to help you to catch yourself when you're defaulting or self-doubt or whatever it may be, so that you can bring yourself back up. Anything you like to add, Leanne?
No, I think you've said it all very well there. Our intent and our plus action equals new identity is probably, it's an intent or the vision of who we want to be plus action, which creates it. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And remember, always put your values in there.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Over to you for recommended resources.
Thank you. So there's a few resources that I wanted to talk to today. The first one, I mean, there's so many books. Like I mentioned one earlier, which is Psycho-Cybernetics. It's an oldie but a goodie. But the one that I wanted to talk to today is The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman. And it really goes deeply into how identity can be consciously constructed. Like we can choose to construct our energy. Um, and our identity. And it really talks about, visibility, leadership, confidence, and it's really powerful to help you create more of that. The second one is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. And this really brings in neuroscience plus identity plus repetition, which is what we basically have said in today's conversation. So our thought patterns shape our identity, and our identity then shapes our behavior. So we really want to create this future self, and we can do that through visualization. Geez, both of us have struggled with that word today. Visualization, meditation, there's a whole range of stuff. So Joe Dispenza has got heaps of podcasts and heaps of TED Talks as well. So if you're not into reading, go and have a look at some of that because it's very, really good stuff. Then the TED Talk that I wanted to bring in is obviously one of my favorite guys, Tony Robbins, Why We Do What We Do, because our identity shapes our world. And, I think it's a great one to listen to. And also from Dan Gilbert, The Psychology of Your Future Self. Both of these podcasts can really help with um, disconnecting, how we disconnect from our future self. Why do we do that? And the powerful link, to how we can shift that to our future. Like, how do we disconnect from our past self, I should say, and reconnect to our future self? Because intentional identity creation is something that we have access to, and we really want to be intentional about the identity that we're creating. And Tony Robbins really talks about energy, focus, and meaning. So what's the meaning? What's the why? And if we can anchor that into that, then obviously everything's possible. And then the YouTube today is again Joe Dispenza, where he really goes into detail around energy and the brain. Energy, I keep saying energy, identity and the brain. And um, so I won't speak too much more about that because I already did a deep dive around Joe Dispenza, but really go and listen to him. He's a neuroscientist and spiritualist and brings it all together in a way that's really useful.
So, okay, so next week, series 3 of season 1 is here. Um, and the theme of the 12 episode series is going to be on the art of intentional living. So it's going to bring in rich aspects from the dimensions of well-being to this series that we're ending today on the neuroscience of being human. So it's kind of wrapping it all together. And so Leanne and I are super, super excited for series 3 to start next week. And which the first episode, which is will be episode 22, it's going to be on let's talk the knowing doing gap, why awareness isn't enough. So we've talked a lot about um, awareness and that tool. So we're going to even go further beyond awareness. So next week's episode will be Wednesday, April 1st at 3:30 p.m. and Thursday, April 2nd, Sydney at 9:30 a.m. And note next week, or not next week, but the week after, we will be doing a time change. Whew, words today. Um, and so we'll let you know what those new times are. And as we get into a glimpse, not going to go through all of them, but this is a snapshot of our 12 episodes. So you can see episode 22 starting next week through episode 29. And then episode 30 through 33. So this next series will take us through mid-June, and then we will have a special Pride Month series at the end of June, since June is Pride Month. So Leanne and I are also excited about that, and June will be here before we know it, knowing how
Absolutely.
fast time goes. So anything that you want to say about this series, Leanne?
No, I think it's just a deeper dive, and I'm very much looking forward to all the elements that we're going to be covering off on, because we can either exist or we can, create our life. And I really want to bring to life the art of living well with meaning, with intention. And I think our first episode, the knowing doing gap, is a really good one because all of us know, but not all of us do. Um, and we often get stuck in that knowing doing gap. I know how to do, like I know, but I don't do it. And why does that happen? So let's pull that apart next week.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as we head to our close here today, I just want to say, you don't become confident and then act. You act and then become confident. That's how confidence is built. And you don't become somebody new overnight necessarily. You become them through your repeated choices and your repeated actions. Your brain is also listening to always listening to what you say to yourself and what you do repeatedly. So, in order to create this new identity, be mindful of what you say and be intentional about what you do.
Exactly. And the question isn't just what do you want to change? It's who are you ready to become? And that's an exciting question. If you just, I mean, just when you ask it, right? When you say those words out loud, it's who are you ready to become? Like there's both huh and you
Yeah.
know, um, you know, when you think about that. So, I encourage you to say um, that out loud. Is the question isn't just who do you want, what do you want to change? It's who are you ready to become? Like say that out loud, start putting that out into the universe, and lots of excitement and everything will start emerging for you. So with that, we are here at the end yet again, and we want to thank you for joining us for today's conversation on identity upgrades, becoming the future you, who you become when your brain, values, and actions finally align.
Yeah. So, once again, we hope it sparked something new, an insight, new question, a new perspective, a fresh idea, or just something that's worth exploring even further.
Exactly. And always here at Let's Talk, our mission is simple. It's to have those conversations that matter and to remind you that you don't have to figure out this complicated thing called life alone. We're here to have the conversations beside you and to give you some tools to put into your toolbox that you can, reach in there when needed and and life gives you some challenges, so that you can catch yourself in the middle, bring yourself back up, brush yourself off, and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And as usual, if you like what you saw today, please like, subscribe, share with those around you, and just keep the conversation going with us.
Exactly, because when we talk,
We really talk.
and anything is possible
So let's talk
with real conversations.
and limitless possibilities. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
everyone.